Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 122 of Two Amazon Sellers and a Microphone, brought to you by Solozo. Today, Kris and I are super excited to talk with Orion Avidan, an inventory cash flow expert. Orion, how are you doing?
I'm doing perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, we were just talking beforehand. It's 8 o'clock at night in Israel, where you're from, and
yeah.
Thanks for spending your evening with us. We really appreciate it.
I love doing these.
Well, so do we. We feel like every time we talk to somebody, we learn something completely new. I mean, Kris and I have been doing this for a long time, but from your angle, just inventory, how that meshes with cash flow, and Kris and I could talk for hours on the mistakes that we've made personally in that regard. So we're excited to jump in and learn all about this. But before we do, can you give us just a little background on you? We'd love to hear your story on how you got involved in this in the first place.
Okay, so I got into e-commerce from inventory and not vice versa. I've actually been studying the metadata, the everything about logistics for about 10 years now. I came into this actually from manufacturing side. I was enamored with manufacturing when I was a soldier in the Israeli army. Wow. And then I went to work for Intel in their manufacturing facility in Kiryat Gat in Israel. And from that, I had all kinds of pivots, tried all kinds of stuff, and eventually realized that the one thing I would like to do for the rest of my life, funnily enough, is do logistics, or basically improve the results of inventory. It's not logistics per se. Mm-hmm. And what I realized is that as a customer, I suffer because businesses can't sell stuff to me. Here I am with this wad of cash, not that big usually, but who cares? And I'm saying, take my money, but I want what I want. Mm-hmm. I don't want to spend money for sakes of spending money. Sometimes I do, but mostly I don't. Like, okay, I need some retail therapy, but I'm a shoe size 11. I'm not buying shoes that are size 9 just because I want to spend my money. Mm-hmm. It doesn't work that way. I actually want shoes that are my size, that are comfortable, that I like, that look pretty to me. If you hit all those marks, ka-ching. And I would be happy. I would be so happy as a customer. It's a win-win situation when you get to that sweet spot. And I'm kind of got a weird taste. I don't like what everybody else likes, sort of. I'm also the wrong size for everything I like. So it's extremely frustrating for me to be a consumer.
I can see. I get it. I mean, as sellers, that's inventory is our. I can't even explain how many inventory mistakes we made. Kris and I talk about this all the time. We go in and out of stock. We've over-ordered, under-ordered. I've had products in you're hitting on. I've got products with size variations, and so getting that right. You know, you over order on one size and under order on the other size, or get the wrong, and then you end up having frustrated customers like you're talking about that would buy from you, but you're not in front of them with inventory.
Yeah, so this is I say it like it's my story. It's actually everybody's story. You're always in the wrong with your taste for a simple reason. We actually all have pretty similar taste at a certain time in time. So there are always good sellers, and those great sellers have this kind of tendency to get out of stock.
Mm-hmm. Especially when there's a worldwide pandemic.
No. That was here way before pandemic, and it's gonna stay way after pandemic unless people start understanding that everything in retail has gone forward with e-commerce. And even in brick and mortar retail, there's been so much progress, except the way we do inventory. I was thinking about the Merchant of Seville, Shakespeare, I think.
Mm-hmm.
That guy has a ship. He sends his ship to the Orient. It comes back. They unload everything on it. They send it back to the Orient. Until it comes back, he has what he has to sell, and he doesn't have anything else. So when that stock's out, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And we have emails and faxes, and our ships are faster, and we have airplanes. So inventory comes in faster than it did that way back when. But we plan it very much the same way as he did. Here's a ship, put everything on it, and ship it. That's where we're stuck. That little, tiny little last bit.
You're very right. I guess I feel like the Merchant of Seville sometimes.
Now,
that's a good analogy.
there's something I have to say about overstock and understock. They're the yin and yang. They're the same thing in a different color. They come together. In Amazon, in the past, the way Amazon would penalize sellers for stocking out, most people just overstocked to the extreme, and they would still stock out on their best sellers from time to time, but they had so much cash invested in inventory that isn't moving. And now Amazon has started bleeding because of that process. They're bleeding money. They have these huge centers that are filled up with inventory that isn't moving, and they don't like it. So they're started penalizing their sellers to the other extreme.
Mm-hmm.
Now they're telling us, you shouldn't ever stock out, but we're not letting you have any space.
You're right.
Exactly right. We've both been in that situation where we've sent way too much inventory in and it sells, so we got to liquidate it. I'm assuming this has to do with your S.Ma.R.T balancing system that you had that you gave us to talk about. So what's that system about?
Well, the S.Ma.R.T Inventory Balancing System is basically a logical process of how to set up your replenishment throughout the supply chain. Inventory can't end up correct at the last location on the Amazon shelf if it's incorrect everywhere else in the supply chain. You can't order the wrong inventory in China, ship the wrong inventory, order unbalanced in China, ship unbalanced to the US, have unbalanced inventory in your 3PL, and then balance your Amazon inventory. You can actually, but it's going to be very, very limited, because as you sell that inventory, you're going to go to your 3PL and it's going to be unbalanced. And unbalanced means two things always: not enough or too much. You're going to have not enough of your best sellers and too much of everything else. And that's going to impact your entire decision making. So the balance stays unbalanced. You're either balanced or unbalanced throughout the process, not just the supply chain, not just the inventory flow, but the cash flow. As you supply the market unbalanced inventory, the market will push back and your cash flow will become unbalanced. You will have to give more and more discounts in order to try and liquidate inventory the market doesn't want. As you do that, you create history that you're going to use in order to make your next decisions. So you're going to base your next decisions on unbalanced data, where this item that sold a ton actually did it at a loss. And if you're not totally connected with every one of your SKUs, you're going to have to do a spreadsheet. And then this is going to say, this one sold 300 units this month. So we need more of it. It's crap. It's losing money, or it's just about breaking even. We could use that money to buy that other item that only sold 70, but it just ran out after 5 days. Could have sold 500. We just didn't have any. Not having that information routed back into your data. And most sellers I've spoken to, okay, let me be very, very clear here. Sellers know their stuff. They know their inventory intimately. I'm not ever saying differently. The fact is, you just don't have all the data, even when you know it intimately. You were out of stock for 10 days. How much sales did you lose?
It's a great question.
It actually has a mathematical answer.
And we get emotionally attached to it too. Like we bring emotion into these products, and we don't want to run out, and we start throwing cash at a product that's not good, and we got to get rid of it, and you move on. Let's do 2 things here. Let's do I have a bestseller, and then I have a new product. 2 different products, 2 different things. So what would a seller need to do for like their bestseller? How much inventory should they project to order to stay in stock of that bestseller so they don't lose that velocity? What are some things that when you want to restock a bestseller, how far your projections are going? What are some there?
Okay, so the S.Ma.R.T inventory balancing says the basic premises of that is this: we do not know the future. All our predictions are somewhat wrong. Some of them are very wrong. Some of them are a little wrong, but half of them are over, half of them are under, and we'll never know which is which.
Okay, I got to stop you real quick. That premise is really good.
Now,
because I love it because it's true. I mean, you don't know.
Now, if you accept the fact that you don't know something and you can't manage by saying you know it because you don't, you're going to change the way you manage. Because everything else we can't change. I've said this in so many occasions. Listen, academia started trying to create an algorithm for predicting retail sales before I was born. After I was born, my parents were still waiting in line for a rotator dial phone. That's how old I am. Today, I have this Mac supercomputer that is also a phone in my pocket. So this is the time that elapsed. We managed to put a man on the moon. We have cars that drive themselves, and we cannot predict how many units of a certain gene a store in Tallahassee will sell next week. We simply cannot, because it's mathematically impossible. And we should stop trying. We should learn to manage with that uncertainty. And
so what would you do?
What we do is we make our decisions smaller and faster. So when you are asking me, how do I predict? I have no idea how do you predict how much to sell in Tallahassee next week. But how much will you sell in the U.S. next month is pretty easy to get good ballpark on.
And I'm assuming you're looking at past data to kind of get that average.
The only thing we have is past data. The future hasn't happened yet. So what we're doing is we're taking the past data and we're aggregating it, because statistically, the more you aggregate, the less variance, the less noise and variance you're going to have. If I want to know exactly how much that store in Tallahassee, I don't know what I have with Tallahassee today, is going to sell, I'm going to be 100% off to each side. So the variance that I live with is plus or minus 100%, maybe even more on the plus side. But if I look at the U.S., my variance suddenly shrinks to plus or minus 10%, 20%. Suddenly it's something that I can live with. I can work with mathematically. Okay, so I'm going to buffer a little bit. I'm going to say I'm not going to order for 4 weeks. I'll order for 6 weeks. If I'm wrong and it's actually under, I'll just sell it in another 2 weeks. If I'm wrong and I'm actually over, then I'll just order more in 2 weeks' time. So we make our decisions smaller and faster, and we make them overlap.
That's big there, because a lot of sellers will just do one big order, and that'll be their Q4 order. But if I'm hearing you right, you're saying break it down into smaller shipments.
Sure. Yeah.
To kind of make sure you don't oversell something.
It has several really positive impacts. One is you're going to flatten your cash flow. Now, do you remember when the pandemic started, all the doctors were talking about was flattening the curve? It's okay that we will have 1 million people sick with COVID. We just can't have them this week. If you flatten your curve for cash flow, you're going to spend the same amount of money and you're going to be richer.
That's a good way to put it. I mean, that really like lays it out now.
Because as right now, if you're doing this huge shipment from China, you have to pay 30% now, 70% when it's on the ship. You haven't sold a unit. You're already 100% out of pocket money. Mm-hmm. If you're going to split it out to small shipments, after several weeks, the first shipment comes in, you're paying for shipment number 10.
Mm-hmm.
And you're starting to roll your money. This shipment is paying for that shipment. This shipment is paying for that shipment. And you're starting to see the cash in your pocket faster. Now, at the end of this, if you're only going to do this roll of the inventory once, the last day of both those models, you get to exactly the same point. It's just the process in between is going to be much smoother, right?
This is a fascinating conversation to me, only because I feel like this was probably the number one biggest mistake that I've ever made in this entire journey. Is I had a bestseller that was just taking off, and my thought process at the time was, if I do a big bulk order, way larger than I've ever done before, I could get my per unit cost down a fraction, and that would be this big savings, and I'd have stock for a long time. And the cash flow implications of that, like you said, I mean, it really messed it up. And
most businesses, and this is not new, this is from an 80s business book. Most businesses go out of business on cash flow, not on profit. Most businesses that go under are profitable businesses that overextended their cash and can't pay for their current debt. And their debtors are no longer willing to wait for their profit to come in, although they're profitable.
Yeah, you're right about that. The debt will not wait for that profit to come in, for sure.
When you're growing, and you started asking previously about a new product, as you introduce a new product to the market, there's a limit on the speed you can grow as a business. So there's also a limit on the speed you can grow on a product. It's not a specific number. Every business needs to know how deep their pockets are and how quick their cash turn is, or their cash to cash cycle, to know how fast can they grow. Because in retail, you have to spend before you can make money.
Mm-hmm.
And as you buy that bulk of inventory because you just grew 1,000%, and I worked with somebody, this happened to him. Their campaigns went out off the roof. Their products were doing amazing. So they needed a ton of new inventory. And then all their money was at the suppliers. Their inventory didn't come in yet. And unfortunately, then Corona hit. So It's too much risk. You have to manage your cash flow to know how much risk you can take on with new inventory and inventory investment. So when you're trying on new products, you have to have some kind of a model. And it's not that I have a one-size-fit-all recommendation. How you're going to test that product, figure out if it's a fast runner or a slow runner, and and decide what to do with it.
And go small. Go small shipments. You can keep
Always.
up with the cash. Yeah.
And the other thing about going small, the main reason people don't do it is because the shipment costs more. Overall, you're going to pay more for shipping. Maybe. So why am I saying maybe? One is because you can plan for it. And instead of sending a container load of one item, you can create smaller orders of more of your inventory and do a container load of multiple items and reduce a lot of the cost by that. Yeah, it's mixed SKUs and that has a cost implication, but that's negligible. We eventually get to the negligible part. Okay, so we're going to pay a couple of cents more per item. We're going to sell 10, 20, 30 more units a day. It works out. So a lot of the extra costs can be managed out of the equation. But the other thing is that we usually account for only part of our inventory cost when we do this math in our head. We say we're going to buy this item and it's going to be cheaper, and then we're going to ship it in big containers, so that's going to be cheaper. And then we totally ignore the fact that we bought it 3 months ahead of time, so we're going to pay for storage for 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it can be in your garage if you have this big of a garage, but you could do something else with your garage. You can get rent for your garage. You can have a gym in your garage and not pay for your gym, whatever. Everything has an alternate cost.
This is fascinating to me because I feel like, at least from my perspective, you're so like, it's just ingrained in us that the cardinal sin is going out of stock, and it's just the worst thing that can happen, which it is not great if you go out of stock, but it's scary.
It is the cardinal sin. I agree.
Yeah.
Totally.
But I feel like we're scared of the prospect that sales are going to take off and we've got nothing in the wings. But I see what you're talking about now is, if you plan for that already, you could have these monthly shipments coming in and plan for. My question to you is, do you see this mindset from the supplier side shifting as well, where they're, a lot of times they talk about these large minimum order quantities you have to do. And of course, all that's negotiable and you can get lower. But do you see them responding more to this sort of just-in-time inventory that Amazon likes, where they're trying to get it in? Do you see that better relationships there as well?
It depends on where you are in the world. I do see it even in China. With China, it's you need to create a good relationship with a supplier, and then you can start being creative with them.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere in the world, what I noticed is if you start negotiating not about money, you don't even have to offer more money. They're game. The fact is, suppliers are really used to getting a lot of negotiation focused on costs. The great focus of business world for the past several decades is reduce your cost and reduce your unit cost.
Mm-hmm.
So all of their attention, all of their muscle is there. And then if you say, okay, I'm paying this, can we do that? They almost don't have any resistance against it because they don't know what to say. Now, I have to say something about unit cost. unit cost is a lie.
I want to hear about this.
So, of course, you have an agreement with your supplier to pay a certain cost per unit that you buy. It's just that when you look on your business, how much you paid for each unit in this container is besides the fact. The important thing is, how much did you pay for the units you sold? So I got this great, amazing deal. I bought 1,000 units. I knew a priori I'm only going to sell 50. If I take this $1 a unit I paid for 1,000 units and divided by the 50 units that I actually sold that I could have bought maybe for $3 a unit, I'm actually out of pocket instead of profitable.
It's a great point.
Actually, this is not something I made up. I just don't remember the math, but this is a true story that happened.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like a true story I can relate to. Yeah, that's the story when you launch a product that typically doesn't work.
But you don't. When you launch a product, you don't know how many units you're gonna sell. So you need to do some tests, and you need to try out the market, and you do some validation. The story I'm talking about is from the U.S. defense contractors market. They had a contract for 50 units, but it was cheaper to buy the 1,000 on a per unit basis. And the project lost money because of this kind of thinking. Now, we're in retail. We don't know the future. So we have to minimize our risk by reducing the amount of stuff we don't know. And that means doing validations and tests, and then smaller, faster decision making. So I'm doing the first run, and I know ahead of time that if this picks up and it's my next best thing, I'm going to put stuff on an airplane and lose money on that 1, 2, 3 weeks shipments, just so that I don't lose the velocity. And then when the next cheaper shipment comes in by sea, I'm ready for it. What happens a lot of times, I talk to sellers and they say to me, I had this bestseller. It was doing amazing. Then it ran out. And then when I finally got some inventory back in, it didn't sell. Crap. It was a slow seller. It was one of my worst. So you see, it doesn't hold. Things wane. You let the market go. But during that time where you weren't in stock, a competitor came in with maybe something a little bit different that the market wasn't willing to try until you stocked out and they had no choice. Or maybe, a competitor came in, maybe they tried something else, their attention moved, but had you kept them there, they would have been there.
These are all things that we think about, as sellers, but it makes it better. It makes it sink in more when somebody else tells you, like, this is what you need to do, and because there's no emotion there. They're coming at you as like there's no emotion attached to it. So if I'm hearing you right, the best way to improve your cash flow, smaller and faster.
Yep.
That's it. It's all it comes down to, Dustin. Smaller and faster shipments.
Well, I mean,
but it's just that you have to understand you can't have this huge I buy big, I buy cheap channel, supply chain, and you're going to come to it and say, okay, supply chain, you're big, you're huge, let's do smaller. You have to redesign the supply chain. It's not going to change on its own. And we are very, very trained, and it's ingrained in us not to do the most expensive thing right away. To do it's called local optima. I'll buy the cheapest, I'll ship it the cheapest, I'll do this the cheapest, this the cheapest, this the cheapest. Overall, I'll have the cheapest result. Problem is, business doesn't work like that. It's not a game of sums.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big management guru that I follow, passed away a few years ago. Unfortunately, he's not so popular anymore. His name was Goldratt. Bezos read his books and was impacted by them significantly. Not that I'm saying he's doing it right, but he did read them, so I'm high up there. And what he says is, he explained it this way: if you take gold rings and you weigh them, this is like the cost, and you want to have more, all you have to do is make the rings bigger or add more rings. This is an aggregation, a game of sums. The more you have, the more you have. The more optimized each unit is, the more the entire system is optimized. But a business is a chain. If you want your chain to be stronger, where do you go?
Each link?
Really?
I don't know.
I have 11 links and I can only strengthen 2. Which would I strengthen?
The ends.
And then I pull on it and snap. Where do I strengthen my chain?
In the middle.
And I pull on it and snap. I strengthen the weakest link. There's only one link that's weaker than everybody else. Because otherwise the chain, anything will break the chain. And if I don't strengthen the weakest link, I strengthen other parts of the chain. And I pull on it. It will snap. There's only one place where I can apply my energy, my resources, to ensure that this chain won't snap again. That's the weakest link. So it's not a game of additions. It's not the more I put on each chain link, the better I am. I have to strengthen the weakest link, and there's a limit to how much I can strengthen it. I strengthen it, I strengthen it, I strengthen it, and at some point, it's no longer the weakest link. And if by inertia I keep investing in that link, we pull on the chain, Amazon pulls on our chain, and snap. It's broken.
Pull my chain a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that is true. Well, that's a really good analogy. I mean, I think the reality is for most sellers, if they're trying to do everything right, their weakest link probably is cash flow management, and it's tied up in too much inventory, or I think a big one is if you do tie your cash flow up into like a bestseller, well, you've got no room to launch new products. I mean, and it keeps going that way. And so, yeah, I really think it's fascinating what you are talking about. Now, how do people work with you to improve this? I mean, if people are really fascinated by this and they want to work with you, how does your whole program work to help people with their cash flow?
And as I said, it's just not enough to say I'm doing a change or put in a computer system in place. We have to redesign the supply chain. We have to figure out how to make sure that you have a good enough turnover rate that you can feed Amazon or your other sales channels at the correct rate without going out of stock and without holding inventory for no good reason. I totally get the fear of stocking out. On the other hand, there is no reason to hold inventory today for Kingdom Come. You're just paying for that inventory and losing the profit on it. So it's a matter of building a chain. There's my chain again.
Yeah.
And instead of just saying, okay, I'm selling on Amazon, so I'm going to buy, put everything on Amazon and sell, 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 sell. And then I'm going to count my money. It's not going to work. We make a supply chain with different points on the way that we can balance and manage our inventory in. So we have a lot of decision points on the way as well. If I make smaller, faster decisions, I can then multiply my touch points and my correction points. It's like driving. Let's say you go out from Beersheba, where I am, and you want to go to Tel Aviv. You don't get in your car, say, okay, Tel Aviv is that way, put your steering wheel that way, press on the gas, and stop. You're going to keep adjusting the entire time you're driving. And when we go to the automatic car, hopefully, it will do that exactly. It will keep adjusting. But if you make a huge shipment, put it on a ship, and wait for it to get to the US, you can't do any adjustments whatsoever. And if it falls into the sea, which happened, okay, now you have to wait for that ship to get to a port where they will offload it and tell you whether or not it's your shipment. And if it's not, when will they get your shipment to you? Or if it tries to go through the Suez Canal and gets stuck because it made the wind just blew it just a little bit to the right, which just happened.
Mm-hmm.
And that ship is still stuck in Egypt because they're fighting over money. And nobody got their inventory back.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of sellers that complain that Amazon is splitting their shipments. They want to do one big shipment to one Amazon FC because it's cheaper. But I'm looking at it, I'm saying it's dangerous, sir.
Yeah.
If that FC sucks today, this week, if the truck has an accident, God forbid, all your inventory is there. I like getting it split up between FCs because I just multiplied the chances that my inventory will fly in and get on the shelf by 3, by 4, by 6. When my team comes to me and says, listen, we have a problem. We can't ship this in one shipment. I say, okay, do 2, do 3, do 4, do 5. Love it. Okay, it's going to cost me a little bit more. Sometimes it actually costs me less because I get closer FCs because it's a smaller shipment. Amazon has more flexibility with me. But the most important thing is if I'm shipping one shipment, I have one roll of the dice. And if I got the wrong number, I'm out. It's double or nothing. When I send my shipment on several smaller shipments, I get 5 rolls, 10 rolls. What's the chance of me blowing out on all of them? It's actually pretty slim.
This is you're making me sort of, or you're opening my eyes to a little bit of a slightly different way of thinking about all of this, and this is why these conversations are so interesting. Because you're right about all these hidden costs and hidden risks that people don't think about. Yes, shipping to one FC, 2,000 units may sound cheaper, but you're 100% right. If it takes them 3 weeks to check it in to that FC and Charlotte or Dallas would have checked in 2 days, then your opportunity cost is 12 days of selling. And that's all. This is interesting because I think, like I said, it's a hesitation sometimes to be smaller and be more incremental and just keep that rolling. I think it takes more work, takes more effort potentially to do it. Maybe not. Obviously with a system like what you have would be good. Really interesting. So I have a question. So this is your S.Ma.R.T system, your S.Ma.R.T balance. S.Ma.R.T is an acronym, I'm assuming. Do you want to? Is it?
It is. I haven't practiced it for a long time. It's
I put you on the spot. I
yeah, I
apologize.
forgot. I actually forgot.
I
It has a meaning.
like it. Well, it sounds smart.
It
Either
doesn't.
way.
It's really. It's about the smart inventory system. It's about uh, the replenishment. The really important thing there is that it has an R that says replenishment. And what you want to do is to have a faster replenishment, and yeah, faster replenishment, more turnarounds.
Yep.
If you turn around your inventory more, you turn around your money more. Basically, you make more money.
Yeah.
You have more opportunities to make more money.
Well, I mean, I think there's a big thing right now that, I mean, Amazon is kind of forcing people to really focus on this a lot more as well, especially when you see your IPI number fluctuate all over the place, and you see like your sell through is going into the red and you're freaking out. I mean, they are forcing us to look at it, and it sounds like all the things that you're talking about, they fit right into that IPI. You don't have excess, you're not going out of stock. If you can find that sweet spot, then Amazon's going to like that a lot.
Yeah. Here's the thing. It's not a sweet spot. It fluctuates.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a buoy. You have to stay on top of that water level all the time. So I keep pushing back when people tell me, so how do I forecast? What's the sweet spot? It's a process. It's always going to need work. It's actually not a lot of work because we have the systems, but the systems won't do it. You have to set up your supply chain. You have to set up your mentality, basically, to be ready and to take a plunge. It's the last thing I have to say about this is this. It's extremely scary because it's not PPC. When you start this, you're not going to see any changes. It's going to look like every other day. And it takes a couple of weeks for the impact on cash flow to start, but it's not going to be groundbreaking. It's not $1 million. It's just this easier breath. Your cash flow is flowing better, but nothing major has happened. And nothing major happens for 3 months, for 6 months, and then at the end of the year you look back and you're $2 million above where you could have been had you not done this. You're $5 million ahead. But it's never going to be this instantaneous rush. It's a long process.
Well, I mean, obviously, if the impact down the road is 2 million, 5 million, then it's well worth it. And for anybody who's listening right now and they're interested in this and they need help in this regard, how do they get in touch with you? How do they start working with you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. My name is Orion Avidan. I believe I'm the only Orion Avidan in the world. It's not a common name anywhere that I know of.
Well, I'll tell you, I did Google you earlier, and Google autofilled your name. So, so not only are you the only one, you're also very popular. You get a Google autofill.
And you can just write me on my personal email, orion.avidan@gmail.com, or at my business, Orion at retail-ad with a double D -venture. So it's adventure, but yeah, I didn't think it through when I made that name up. .com.
I like it.
And reach out for me. I'm not as active on social media as I used to be, so a little patience and I will reach out back.
Well, I encourage everyone to do that. I mean, it was the fascinating conversation for us, I know for sure. We'll have to have you back on. It's just like you said, everything changes and fluctuates. There may be something brand new to talk about in a few months. So we'd love to get you back on and talk about that. But
my calendar is your calendar.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Great conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed it completely.
Absolutely. Well, thanks everyone also for watching or listening or however you're consuming this content. If you'd like to see more content like this with amazing people like Orion who can just add so much value to your business, I encourage you to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening to it. Leave us a review. Let us know how we're doing. Also, you can see us live. We go live on Solozo's Facebook page, and we also go live on Solozo's YouTube page, and we're about to go live on LinkedIn really soon. So that'll be very exciting. So make sure that you follow us there as well. And thanks again. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back at this again tomorrow. Thanks, Orion.
Great. Thank you.